The Holy Gospel this morning is found in St. Luke in the 21st chapter. Well, then Jesus told them a parable. Look at the fig tree and all the trees. And as soon as they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves, and you know that summer is already near. So also, when you see these things taking place, you know that the kingdom of God is near. And truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. The gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. Now it is the first Sunday here in Advent, start of the brand new church year. And remember, for Christianity, we always start backwards in the year. So what we do is we commemorate the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and work our way back to his birth. So here we are now in the month of December, approaching the birth of Jesus, but it starts at the end. That is the end of the world as we know it and the inauguration of God's kingdom. And so as Jesus says to his disciples in this little parable about fig trees and other trees, that if once you start seeing the leaves of the tree, you know that it's getting close to summertime. That is the new season. You know, notice that he doesn't say the harvest or anything like that. He's talking about a season, a new time, a new era. So that when you see these leaves, it's like, well, I know spring is, but summer is coming and that kind of thing. It's a new season, a new time. And so when we're talking about Jesus and his birth, it's a new season, a new time of life that we're looking for. And when you see the things that Jesus says, the words that don't pass away, you know the kingdom of God is near. You know that you are in this new time, in this new era. And these words then that Jesus gives us are four of them that we're going to focus on this particular Advent season as we look at the gifts that come from the manger. When Jesus Christ is born as a baby in the stable in Bethlehem, he begins to inaugurate this new season with new language, with new words, and the words of joy and peace and faith and love. And so we begin to see those in action, we know that we're in this new time. When you see joy, when you see peace, when you see love, when you see faith, the new season is here, the new time is here. The old will pass away, and the new is inaugurated. The new is born. So as we begin to look through these particular gifts, this week we're going to look at joy, probably the culmination of all the Christian gifts. I know Paul says faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. But joy is really what we're shooting for. That ability to be able to trust in God and God's mercy, that God has hope and love for us, and that we can rest assured in that hope and in that love, so that we can be able to live the life that God has asked us, to be able to work for justice and hope, to see where there are places where there is darkness or injustice and work to change them, to make healthy and whole those places in the world that are not, to have the kind of joy that allows you to survive the tough times. That's where it's at. Now, because of us who live in this country, we have another common word that we kind of get confused with joy, and we blame it all on Thomas Jefferson because he told us that the pursuit of happiness was some kind of inalienable right. But joy is not happiness. Happiness comes and goes. Happiness is fleeting. Joy is the rock-solid gift from God that you are loved and cherished beyond your wildest imagination. Happiness. Yeah. You know, I mean, many of you know, I'm a fan of the Minnesota Vikings, a professional football team. Some days I'm happy. Most of my life I've been flat out miserable. But joy, well, joy is being able to trust that there's going to be a world where we can have fun and family and fellowship and all the things that bring about what football means to me. Joy is that enduring, perduring gift of God that is given to each one of us. Installed in us in the waters of baptism, encouraged in the bread and the wine of Jesus Christ, the joy that we live allows us to be able to just go wide-eyed into the world, excited about what we have. One of my uncles, he was always a favorite one in a way, mainly because whenever he came to town, there was always fun to be had, and I have so many stories now I could regale us well until the snow melts. But one of the things about Uncle Brian that he had was an incredible joy in the outdoors. Now, when you grow up as he did in Duluth, Minnesota, lived most of your life there, the only time he didn't live in Duluth was when he was in Vietnam. So when you grow up, it's kind of in your DNA, so to speak. And when you're out in the North Woods, when you're on the edge of the Granite Shale and see and hear Lake Superior, or you hear the loon floating in a lake, or you hear the ruffed grouse that flushes out in the trees that you cannot see, when you're in the North Woods and hear the howl of the wolf, you know that you are home. And my uncle was completely at home in this world. So much so that the last time I saw him before he died, a few years before he died, I decided to swing by the old family home. By now, it was just my uncle whose health no longer allowed him to take care of the house. He was pretty much homebound. And my aunt, who was also in that similar situation, lived in this house. And the house was run down. And so much so that, they had never changed the linoleum in the floor of the kitchen. And now, you got to remember, my dad grew up was born in that house, and so I'm 40 at the time, so you've never had a new kitchen floor in 60 years. So what would happen is where they never changed the furniture, so where the kitchen table sat was about 6 inches higher than where you walked between the kitchen and the living room. It was kind of like you were in a little trench because they had so ingrained over the 60, 70 years of walking on that linoleum this little path between the dining and living room so that you could actually reach out and touch the kitchen table. It was about shoulder height. And when my brother and I went to visit my uncle at that time, he was so excited because he had just finished a pair of deerskin pants. My uncle had decided in the last years of his life that he was going to completely go back to our Native American heritage, and he built a teepee, he built deerskin pants, shirt, coat, hat, everything, and he had just finished this pair of pants. And he was showing my brother this pair of pants sitting up there on the kitchen table, holding them out to us, and my brother and I are about eye level with them, and he's so excited, he can barely get the words out for a pair of pants that weren't really waterproof, weatherproof, or anything actually useful for the North Woods, but he made them out of the deer that he had harvested. And he was so proud. And he was so at home. We buried my uncle in that outfit that he had made for himself in those last years of his life. It seemed only appropriate that a man who was so in tune with the North Woods have his final resting place with the clothes that he made from the animals he harvested. That's joy. That no matter what had happened in his life, and my uncle did not have a good life. He suffered from post-traumatic stress syndrome, an Agent Orange that he got while he was in Vietnam. He couldn't hold a job or a relationship for longer than 6 weeks. It was a tough life for my uncle. But when he was in his element, when he knew that God was with him, where God had placed him, his eyes would widen, and the big smile that I always remembered from my Uncle Brian would show up. It's that kind of joy that we're looking for in our lives as a gift from the manger. Not the fleeting happiness that comes and goes, but the deep-seated trust that what we have been given by God is part and parcel of who we are in our identity as children of God. So finally, that the joy that we receive from God is not something that is ephemeral and passes, but rather implanted within us, so that joy becomes a way in which we live and move and have our being. To find a way that we can be able to celebrate the gifts of God, all of them, love and hope, peace, faith, whatever they might be. But it's the joy that grounds us, to be able to trust that no matter how much snow we get, when we see the leaves, while summer is near.